How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
I'm moving on now. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. If you wish to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. There is other stuff happening in the world beyond all the stuff that has happened in Minnesota, and I want to talk about the CDC. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is in Atlanta, and it's one of those necessary entities. And let me just say, one of my frustrations with a lot of people on the left, and increasingly there are those on the right, they make arguments that we don't need X, Y, or Z, and they can say it because they never had to do without it. And they don't understand. They concoct in their mind a scenario that would be good, but we have examples from the past of it being bad. Take, for example, American leadership in the world. Right now, there's a big isolationist movement on the right that we should bring all of our troops home, and it's a very intoxicating argument. And the pushback is what it would be like if we were not in charge. And no one alive right now on planet Earth has a real memory of what it was like before the United States led the world, except the very elderly who fought in World War II. So you've got the luxury of saying the world would be a better place and we'd be a better place if we weren't in charge of the world. It's too expensive for us to do. And no one alive has a memory, really, of a time before we were in charge. And so they get the luxury of fantasizing about it. All you have to do is study history. Take the Federal Reserve. I think the Federal Reserve as it is structured is unconstitutional. But I also recognize that it would be very bad if the Federal Reserve went away. As it is, there are lots of people who want to end the Federal Reserve. I have many of my friends on the right, many of my close friends want to end the Federal Reserve. And I'm like, you have the luxury of wanting to end the Federal Reserve because you have no living memory, nor does anyone else on the planet, of what the country was like before the Federal Reserve. It stabilized our money supply. We have cycles now of recession and growth, and we had many times before the Federal Reserve boom and bust cycles that were far worse than what we have now. We had a lot more instability in currency. Lots of bad things in the economy that existed before we handed control of the monetary supply to an independent board that was outside the mood of politics. And you right now are yelling at me through the radio. I can feel it in the force that they are political. Jerome Powell is political. All your Republican politicians tell you he's a Democrat and he's on the side of Democrats. But the thing is, historically, every party in power in Washington says the Federal Reserve is political and on the other side. Everybody does it. The Democrats, including Joe Biden's administration, blasted Jerome Powell for decisions because he was Trump appointed. So I tend to let it go in one ear and out the other. You have no memory of this. The CDC is one of those examples. There are people who think the CDC is unnecessary. Robert Kennedy is apparently one of them. And he is engaged in a mass purging at the CDC. Now, I want to make a nuanced point because it actually is a nuanced point because it's on the one hand, on the other sort of point. The CDC is actually a necessary entity but also there are people who work at the CDC who don't necessarily need to be there or should be there. And I think that Dr. Fauci undermined public trust in public health, as did others. But I think Robert Kennedy himself does the same. There are many people who are bought in on Robert Kennedy's nonsense. He's a crank and a conspiracy theorist. Stop clocks get things right twice a day, and Kennedy is possible to get things right as well. But he had this bizarre comment yesterday. He's all about mitochondrial illness, and you see people, particularly on the right, who are hyper online, have embraced mitochondrial disease. And I can look at a kid and tell he's got mitochondrial disease. No, you actually can't. You're a crank. And the mass purge at the CDC, you should understand, based on what multiple people are saying in the Atlanta community in public health and people in Washington, is that Robert Kennedy, despite promises not to do it during his confirmation, is rapidly trying to move public health to embrace his favorite fringe position for which there is no real evidence, and that is that vaccines cause autism. Some of you have bought into this idea, and you will trust no science that says otherwise, but it's frankly not true. Why? Because if it were true, the rates of autism and the rates of vaccine uptake would mirror each other, and they don't. That's one statistical way we can say it's probably not true. But also there's been lots of research, and it's simply not true. And autism is something, and again, it's people are trying to find a solution for autism. Many of the people who believe it, their kids are affected by autism. And again, it's let people be emotional. But when it starts shaping public health, I think it's a problem because it's not true. There's been plenty of research into it. One guy spread research that's been thoroughly discredited, but people, Robert Kennedy including, believe it. And apparently Kennedy has tried to get people at the CDC to embrace the idea, and a lot of them said no, and they're being pushed out the door. However, some of them needed to be pushed out the door. This is where it gets complicated because there's not a bright line here. One of the people being pushed out is Dmitry Daskalakis. For those of you who don't know him, this was Joe Biden's monkeypox czar, so to speak. He was the advisor on monkeypox. For those of you who do not understand what monkeypox is or was, it started spreading. Now, I'm about to go somewhere if you have kids in your car. I'm going to be polite, but I got to talk about it, and it's awkward if you got kids in the car, and I just need to give you advance notice. During a pride celebration in the Canary Islands, a group of gay men had an orgy and group sex with an individual who was infected with monkeypox. And they began to spread it. And some of them left the Canary Islands and they went to Berlin to continue this pride celebration with more group sex and more orgies. And many of them got infected and some of them came back to the United States. And it was all traced basically back to one group activity of hedonism in the Canary Islands. And the easiest way to prevent the monkeypox from spreading was to not have sex. Dmitry Daskalakis, who is Biden's monkeypox advisor, one, insisted we needed to change it away from monkeypox to mpox because it was stigmatizing, and two, went on television, and I will give you the quote. This is his quote. "One person's idea of risk is another person's idea of a great festival or Friday night." He couldn't bring himself as an activist in the gay community to tell gay men, maybe don't have sex for a couple of weeks. Couldn't do it. The Biden administration, it was the simplest way to eliminate. They were willing to shut the entire country down for months on end to stop the spread of COVID, but they couldn't tell gay men to stop having sex for 2 weeks. And this guy led the effort. And he's, for the life of me, I don't know why, still at the CDC. In his resignation letter today, this man, who, by the way, also posed for the cover of a magazine, wearing a leather pentagram harness. Pentagram, you know, the satanic symbol, was dressed in a leather pentagram harness on the cover of a magazine. And he's resigned now. He wasn't pushed out the door. He resigned in protest. And on his way out the door, not only did he put his pronouns in his signature line, he, him, his, he used the phrase pregnant people, not pregnant woman. This is a man of the medical community. He's a man of the medical community who needed to not be at the CDC. I have concerns about what's happening at the CDC. I do. I got concerns, very much so. But also, some of the people who are leaving or being pushed out the door needed to be pushed out the door. We gotta, gosh, rarely am I lost for words on these things, but here we go. Part of the problem that we have in this country is it's all or nothing, either or, black and white, their side, our side. And actually, we should be willing to acknowledge there are problems across the board. There are problems with honesty across, lying is not just the purview of Democrats. There are Republicans who lie as well. And I'm concerned with the attempts to rein in the CDC, but recognize there are people at the CDC who needed to be purged. And so it's a good thing some of them are being pushed out the door, but it's also not good if it's undermining science. But some of the ones who were being pushed out the door were undermining science themselves. So it's a little more complex. I just got to say that I'm glad this guy is gone. But if the greater issue is Kennedy really is trying to get people at the CDC to sign off on discredited science to push his anti-vaccine agenda, that's a problem. Vaccines are good. So, there's the story in the Bible about Joseph and his brothers sell him into slavery, and they tell the father he's dead. And Joseph is not. He actually takes over Pharaoh's household in Egypt. And they come to him. He tells them, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. That's kind of my view on some objections to vaccines. Take the MMR vaccine. The original MMR vaccine was derived from fetal tissue from an abortion. And that was the best they knew when they were developing the MMR vaccine in the 60s and 70s, is they used this tissue that was derived from an aborted child. I have a number of friends who for years, until we started having derivatives of the MMR that were not based on this aborted child's tissue, who refused to take the MMR. And I was okay with them because I got the objection. And it wasn't it causes autism. It was that it's based on research of an aborted child. My view was what people meant for evil, God meant for good. Think of all the lives that have been saved. And again, this gets to measles, mumps, rubella. We don't have mass outbreaks. All we do now, because people have been vaccine hesitant on measles, or dealing with kids who die from rubella or things like that. We don't have a lot of people who remember these things. Or, just take antibiotics, and we don't have a lot of people who die of scarlet fever these days. Had horrible diseases in the past, and polio, the polio vaccine. My wife had an uncle who was on crutches, debilitated because as a kid he had polio. We don't worry about smallpox outbreaks anymore because vaccines and antibiotics have worked. And now there's this great hesitancy that it cropped up culturally, oddly enough, on the left in Hollywood, and it's spread to people on the right. And there's this great distrust of all medicine now. And some of it is earned and deserved when you have people like this guy who refuses to recognize maybe gay men shouldn't have sex for 2 weeks to stop the spread of monkeypox, but you should be shut in your house for 6 months to stop the spread of COVID. There's a hesitancy there, but I think we got to be real careful here. And I think that the CDC plays a positive role in society in helping us deal with research related to diseases and communicable illnesses. And I think Robert Kennedy's playing with fire here. So I'm glad some of these guys are purged because they needed to be, but not all of them needed to be. And I'm a little bit concerned with where this heads with Kennedy in charge because he ultimately is a conspiracy theorizing crank. I have a point of personal privilege to make since it's my radio show. I'm allowed to. Today is my daughter's 20th birthday. I have no idea how I am old enough to have a 20-year-old daughter. And in the words of my father, he has no idea how he is old enough to have a 50-year-old son. So there we go. It is not just my daughter's 20th birthday, though. It is today my parents' 60th wedding anniversary. 60 years my parents have been married. God bless them. It has been a journey that has taken them around the world, from Louisiana to Dubai and back. My parents met at Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi. My father had basically gotten all his teeth knocked out at a football game, and my mother happened to come upon him. Yeah, when my dad shifts his false teeth around, it's a fun time. But they've been married for 60 years, and that's just people do not value marriage enough. And I know with my parents, it hadn't always been easy, but they stuck together, and I am obviously glad for it. Wouldn't be here otherwise for it. I have two wonderful older sisters, and I'll admit they're good older sisters. They were mean and abusive when I was a child because I am the angel of the family, and they were definitely not. But nonetheless, they're wonderful, wonderful people. I am blessed with a great family. I don't get to see them enough, given my job and travel. But happy anniversary to my parents. Thank you very much for loving each other and loving us. And thank you to my daughter for letting me be not just your father, but your dad, and for bringing me coffee she did during commercial break. Now, I got to tell you about Vision Computers. If you need a computer for yourself, for your office, Vision Computers can build you a computer. They can save you money in the process, and they give you, hands down, the best customer service you're going to get in the computer industry. You don't have to do an IT ticket, an email. You just pick up the phone and call them, and they answer. I can tell you from real-world experience, my son has had problems in the past. Not his computer's problem. They were his fault. His computer is perfect from Vision Computers, and he emailed them late at night, and he got a call back. He thought it was a spam caller calling him after like 11 p.m. I was like, probably not after 11 p.m. You should answer the phone. And it was Vision Computers. They were calling him back. Real human beings calling and helping you. It's not AI. It's not robots. It's people. It's what sets Vision Computers apart. They understand the relationship dynamic. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. You'll talk to real people. Tell them Eric sent you. You might save even more money. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com, and talk to Vision about building your computers or being your IT support. Greetings, my friends. Greetings. I hope you are well today. 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. So I have gotten a lot of questions. Y'all, so no, I'm not gonna say that. I will just say this. I've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of tweets, a lot of private messages, direct messages across multiple platforms. And it's all end times related stuff. So for those of you who are not Christians, a lot of obsession these days among Christians about the end times. Are we in them and all that? Theological answer is yes, we are. But I'm not going to talk about. I'm not talking about the end times. I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and I will, tomorrow is an open line Friday tomorrow. Maybe I will spend some time on that question then, but I spent an hour and a half on Minnesota. I really don't want to spend more time today on Minnesota. In large part, it's emotionally grueling. I don't want to be one of those people who makes the story about myself, because I see this with reporters all the time. The reporters, I had to go to therapy after January 6th because of PTSD. It's just no. I will tell you that I had no children involved in what happened in Minnesota yesterday. My kid was on lockdown at her school with a report of an active shooter that thankfully was a false alarm. But I can tell you, yesterday was emotionally grueling for me having to cover the stuff. I can't imagine what it was like for the parents whose kids were actually involved, or even the reporters who were actually on the scene seeing the gruesomeness. I don't like to see blood. I don't want to look at the pictures. I don't want to get that stuff in my. I don't like to watch movies that are extremely violent because I don't want it in my head. I tend to dwell on that stuff. It tends to recur, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want it in my head. And a lot of people obsess and dwell over it. All of this is to say that I've spent enough time on it. There's other stuff in the world today, and I gotta. I want to move on to the other stuff, but I may talk about the whole end time stuff tomorrow. Maybe. Now, I want to go back to the crime story. That this is a problem for the Democrats. It is. Why? We are 2 weeks beyond Donald Trump imposing his will on Washington, D.C. Even the mayor of Washington, D.C. is praising Donald Trump and the federal government for helping reduce crime just by being present. The mayor of Washington notes that the National Guard is not going into area where crime is the real problem in D.C., but just by being present, crime is being reduced. And that's obvious. If you have a show of force, the criminal element tends to go away. So my kid brought me coffee during break, and I was talking to her about last night. I really I wanted to decompress after yesterday, and I sat in my hot tub last night. Thank you to the Georgia Spa Company. I have this little paradise in my backyard now, and the temperatures were cool last night. And by the way, I guess I should note the Labor Day sale is going on now. Those of you in the metro Atlanta area, they got multiple Atlanta locations and got lots of manufactured rebates. If you want yourself a spa or a hot tub or a cold plunge, you can go get them. It's my shameless plug for a great company that I love doing business with. I sat in my hot tub last night, and it's got surround sound speakers in it, although I wore my AirPods because I was afraid I'd wake up my wife because the bass is actually tremendous in this hot tub. But I turned on the new Batman movie. It's not new. It's been out for a while. It's the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, The Batman, and the Penguin is the bad guy in it. Well, one of the bad guys. I'm not the Penguin, the Riddler. The Penguin's in it, but the Riddler's the bad guy. And I was struck. I actually liked it better the second time. Had a glass of bourbon, sat in the hot tub, watched the Batman. The musical score is good. And I need a projector in my yard, like a blow-up projector, because I was just watching on my big iPad. I need a giant screen and an inflatable projector in my backyard. But nonetheless, decompressing, watching that movie, and one of the elements of the movie is they fire up the bat signal. And in the opening montage and the Robert Pattinson voiceover, he talks about when they fire up the bat signal and it's in the sky, the criminals know that Batman is on the prowl, and many of them tend to go away. Crime goes down. Just by shining the bat signal in the sky, the criminal element tend to get off the streets because they know the Batman is out there somewhere. Jane Coaston, who I actually think is a pretty thoughtful left-leaning reporter. She's been at the New York Times. She's with Crooked Media, which is left-wing media outfit. She put up a tweet. And she's responding to a guy named Moshe Weingarten, who says he himself is responding to a college professor. The college professor says, I'm extraordinarily sick of people saying that my lack of toxic empathy, extremely high level of concern for enemies and hostile strangers means that something human is missing from me. Nope. Per every study ever done, I'm normal. Humans are a predator species. You have picked up a mental virus, which is largely causal for our open borders and Medellin-level crime rates. I feel no particular need to make my life worse because of your pathology. And this person says this is so evidently true, we can't just incarcerate our way out of crime. Why not? Because it's not humane. Why not? You're a bad whatever, and on and it goes. And so Jane Coaston replies to all of this and says the actual reason we can't incarcerate our way out of crime is because literally every American commits dozens of crimes every single day. Speeding, jaywalking, drinking in public, etc. The people who think they are most hardcore about crime are people who think that their crimes are different for some reason. I understand the point she's trying to make. And it is true, you and I probably commit dozens of crimes a day, even if we don't realize we're committing a crime because there's some stupid law on the books from the 1800s. I have a heavy foot, but in Georgia, you can go up to 10 miles over the speed limit and the local police really can't do much to you as long as you're above a 35 zone. State police, however, can. But this we can't incarcerate our rate of crime thing, no, we're not talking about the jaywalkers and we're not talking about the speeders. We're talking about the violent crimes. And to try to nutshell it down to something like that does a disservice to the actual issue because 80% of all crimes are committed by people with more than 3 prior arrests. Did you know that? Most people are not criminals in the sense of going to prison. Yeah, we may speed, you may jaywalk, but they're not felonies. A tiny minority of people in this country are antisocial psychopaths who commit most of the crimes. That's from Jeremy Kaufman. And he's got the data to back it up. 80% of crimes are committed by people with more than 3 arrests. Think about one of the things in this country that we did is the left began to vilify 3 strikes and you're out. And what they did is they found the most sympathetic cases to make the case that the whole thing was bad. Because one of the hallmarks of postmodernism is the exception becomes the rule. Now, how does this play out? You got to follow along with me here. I'm going a little deep for some of you. If you're in Rio Linda, I'll try to make it simple for you. When in postmodern thinking moves beyond rationality to emotion. Your emotions now determine if something is true. The way your emotions are triggered builds the truth. And to trigger the emotions, one of the things people do is they make exceptions the rule. Think about police. In modern times, we're rational people, and we understand there are bad police officers. You don't have to take offense at that. You know there are bad cops. There are corrupt police officers in this country. There are. We shouldn't hide from it. There are abusive police officers. There are police officers who wear their badge and are mean to other people because they have an inferiority complex and they want to lord over other people. They're mean. They're abusive. They're tyrannical. They should never have been given a badge. They are also the exception. They are not the majority of police. The overwhelming majority of police officers are good people who want to serve their community by keeping people safe. That is the overwhelming majority of police officers. In postmodernism, we elevate the exception to the rule. So the exception that there are bad police officers, well, now police officers must be presumed to be bad, corrupt, mean bullies. And the good police officers, well, they're not the norm. That's postmodernism. We take the exception and we elevate it to be the rule. So what did the left do with 3 strikes laws? They took the exceptions, the sympathetic cases, the cases of the mother where the 3rd crime was she was doing something to protect her children, but it was a 3rd felony. Therefore, she's got to go to jail for the rest of her life. They took these sympathy things. Well, this 3-strike law, it's cruel. No. The 3-strike law was actually a very good idea. We should have more discretion within a 3-strikes law for a governor or the president to make an exception and do a pardon. There should probably be that. But the 3-strikes law was actually a really good law. And what happened? Crime went down. Why? Because 80% of crimes are committed by people with more than 3 arrests. So you get the people off the streets who have committed 3 strikes. You improve the situation in your community. In Washington, D.C., we know, for example, that it's like 600 people. 600 people in a city of 1 million people. 600 are the ones doing most of the carjackings, burglaries, shootings. And many of them, because of cashless bail, were let back out on the streets to do more crimes awaiting trial. You round them up, you put them in prison, crime's going to go down, definitionally. This wild extrapolation of, well, we can't incarcerate our way out of crime because we're not going to arrest all the jailbreakers. No, we're not going to, all the speeders. No, we're not going to arrest you for speeding. We may give you a ticket. But you know what? If we actually did hire more police officers and gave more tickets, like I personally think that we should, and in some states do, Indiana is one of the states that does, and Arizona does now too, active enforcement of the left lanes for passing. You would dramatically improve the safety on the roads. And listen, I'm going to go there because it's true and the data says it's true. But overwhelmingly it tends to be married black women. And I don't know why it is, but it just comes up over and over and over in data. Married black women tend to own the left lane, and they don't want to get out of the way. And I don't know why it is, but it's a unique common denominator. They paid for the road. They're gonna drive in the left lane, and they're gonna go slower than everybody else. And it's also in Georgia Floridians for some reason that they go slow. But it actually is. There have been a number of studies that have been like it's a common denominator, and no one seems to know why, what it is. Is it something cultural? Married black women in the left lane going slow? I don't know. But if you go slow in the left lane, you're actually more dangerous in many cases than the speeder because you're causing people to whip around you because you're tying up the traffic in the fast lane. It is the passing lane. And you are actually more of a hazard than the people who are speeding. And I just wish the police would more enforce left lane is for passing than they would speeding, because those people are actually causing more of a problem, more of a hazard on the road than people who are going. Now, I'm not talking about high super speeders, people going 30 miles over the speed limit. I'm talking about people going 10 miles over the speed limit. Way more common because a lot of roads have a natural speed anyway, and people tend to go faster on those roads where there's a natural speed. They tend to go slower on on roads that have a higher speed limit but aren't safe. People tend to have a good measure of that themselves, but it's the people in the left lane who are causing people to whip around them and drive erratically to get around them to be able to speed up because they're oftentimes going slower than the speed limit. So enforce that. You have more cops on the roads doing that, traffic improves. We only have so many cops, and frankly, I would rather the cops fight crime than deal with annoying people from Florida driving slow in the left lane. No offense to those of you living in Florida, but you know exactly what I mean. To say we can't incarcerate ourselves out of crime, though, isn't really true, because we're not really talking about the misdemeanor traffic violations, the moving violations. We're talking about the murders, the robberies, the rapes, the break-ins, the carjackings. And yeah, we actually can incarcerate our way out of those problems if we have the will to do it, and we should have the will to do it. Greetings. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. This is actually local for me. So I broadcast my national show typically from Macon, Georgia. It is where I live, right smack in the middle of the state. And Scott Jennings, you know Scott Jennings from CNN, among other things. He's actually coming to Macon to speak at a gala for my friends at Frontline Policy Council, Cole Museo here in Georgia. If you are interested in hanging out, I expect to be there myself, so it'll be me and Scott Jennings. If you text the word engage to 33777. I'll send you back a link to the RSVP site. So Scott Jennings in Macon, September 8th. It's at 6:30 p.m., the Macon City Auditorium. You got to have a ticket to go. All you got to do is text the word engage to 33777. I expect to be there. Should be a fun time. Scott is a great guy. I still hope he runs for the Senate in Kentucky. I don't know that he's going to. I think he'd be the best candidate to run in Kentucky. But he's a good guy. He's been great on CNN. I thought it was very notable last night. He suggested when they were arguing about thoughts and prayers and stuff that, maybe we should just take 10 seconds on this roundtable discussion where they've been yelling at each other, just take 10 seconds to just be quiet for a minute and reflect on the dead. And of course, Abby Phillips was having none of that. I thought it was very telling that she shot him down on just wanting to spend just 10 seconds in silence before they got back to yelling about thoughts and prayers. It's just kind of wild to me, the amount of people on the left condemning Christians wanting to pray for Christians who have been shot. Maybe that'll come up in a speech. I don't know. If you want to go see Scott Jennings and me September 8th at Macon, Georgia, text engage to 33777. Now, I want to tell you, if you're a family and you got kids and you're beginning the conversations with your kids on, saving money, getting a bank account, Old Glory Bank has free resources for your family. In fact, it's been a little bit since I've been there. It's Old Glory Bank, if I can spell, bank.com/smart, SMART. The Pursuit, a collection of resources from Old Glory Bank dedicated to your pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Here you'll find insights on budgeting, fraud awareness, managing your finances, tackling debt, and more. And you got stuff on student loan, on growing today's dollars into future funds, on financial literacy, a young adult's guide to choosing a bank, how compound interest works, budgeting 101 for college students. It's all there. It's all free resources that you can use with your family at oldglorybank.com/smart. It's perfect for homeschool curriculum. It's perfect for just conversations around the dinner table. oldglorybank.com/smart. And then if you want a great bank account, Old Glory Bank can get you a great bank account as well. I have a checking account and a savings account with them. It's oldglorybank.com/smart. All the resources are free there. oldglorybank.com/smart. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Talk to you guys tomorrow.